Let's begin a new session. We aim to be a part of your learning experience. You have often come across company logos on billboards, posters, or banners. These attractive logos that you see are being created or edited by one of the most popular photo editing software called Adobe Photoshop. This session begins with the detailed steps of using an image corrector option called spot healing with relevant images in Photoshop. Then it explains different tools such as the dodge tool, burn tool, etc. that form an important part of this spot healing process. Next, it gives a detailed description of the steps used in designing a web layout, in designing your website using Photoshop. Then it explains the role of an AI component called Select Subject. Further, it gives you the detailed steps of exporting images outside Photoshop to be used by web developers in the process of your website creation. So, get ready to create some beautiful logos or images that would add value to your web page or website.
How to do spot healing in Photoshop. Let's say you get a photograph of your team members which has to go on the website, but you want to do some basic corrections on their face and improve some of the highlights and remove some of the spots on the face. So for that, the perfect tool is spot healing. So I have a picture here which I am going to open up in Photoshop, and as you can see, it's a good picture here, but she has some pimples on her face. So let's zoom in, and you need to remove these pimples over here. So for that, what you can do is you can select the spot healing brush tool. Now with the spot healing brush tool, you can simply remove these spots with a single click. So we can select the spot healing brush tool. It basically shows a circle, and you can make the circle bigger and smaller by using the right or the left square brackets. Left square brackets to make it smaller and the right square bracket to make it bigger, as you can see here. So this circle is known as brush, and the size of the brush can also be controlled from the control panel here. You can increase the brush size. You can change its hardness and spacing. Currently spacing is not something we require, and we want to keep the brush hard edged. So we can easily remove the spots. So we'll keep it at 50 pixels here. That's a decent size for this example. And I'll simply click on the spot here. We will see a black color spot coming in. Now that is what defining the spot you want to remove, and as soon as you click and leave your mouse, you would see that this spot will be fixed. You can see these spots are getting fixed now as I click, and it's going to get fixed away. So like this, we can simply remove all the pimples from her face and those small spots which we have here. As you can see, now the spots have been removed from here. You can also use a tool if some spots needs to be removed manually by using the clone stamp tool here. The clone stamp tool asks you to sample the area and then you can paint with it. In the spot healing, the software automatically judges what has to be done and what area needs to be picked to remove that spot. But if you want to do a manual control on it, you can use the clone stamp, and when you use the clone stamp, we can simply press Alt to pick up a sample, and then you can paint with that sample over here, as you can see. So in this case, we will not be using the clone stamp because you can see that is not required and it's not going to give the result which we need here. So I'm going to undo. But let's see where the clone stamp can be used. For example, I want to remove these streaks of hair here. So a clone stamp would be the perfect choice. You can press Alt to pick up the spot which I want to paint with, and I can simply paint over that area. You can remove those extra streaks of hair from here. So as we paint, we can remove those extra hair which we don't want to display in the image. There we go, and I can also clean up this area a bit. Let's create that edge. So I'm pressing the Alt to pick up the sample area and then paint over it. Like that. We can also use clone samples to remove the small spots. So you can press the Alt to pick the area and paint over that pimple, and you can see this photograph is now corrected. There are other tools you can use in Photoshop to make the picture better. For example, you can use the dodge, bun and sponge tools. So the dodge tool makes anything lighter. So we use the dodge tool, we can make certain areas of the image lighter in color. So for example, I want to make this area little, as you can see, I can make that lighter. So that's more lighter, so I'm going to undo, press Ctrl Z to undo it, and you can make the brush a little bigger. Now I want to remove that little shadow from the face. You can see we are just painting little lighter version of it here. So I want to show more light coming from this side of the area. So you can do that by undoing a little bit, too bright here. And what we can do is, before we paint this area with the dodge tool, we can reduce its exposure. The exposure, reduce it to approximately 15% and then paint over this area. Make it a little bit lighter. Now we can go to the burn tool. I love to use burn tool especially on the eyelashes and the eyebrows. So for example, if you got to the eyebrows, you can simply paint over it to make them darker. As you can see. Like that, and I can simply make it darker from here. So we have little bit more definition to the eyes. So that's the burn tool. Then you have the sponge tool. Sponge tool is basically used for desaturation or saturation, means to decrease the colors or to increase the colors here. I want to enhance the colors and this picture. So we can go to the saturation option and go to the eye area, and we can simply make it more saturated so that brown color of the eyes will be more prominent here now. Same thing, I want to just change the lip colors to be more prominent from the certain parts, and you can see we have a much better picture here. So if you're going to compare before and after, you can simply go to the history panel by going to the window, and you can go to the history panel. You can see all the steps we have done in Photoshop so far. So if we go to the spot healing, and this is what the image was looking like, and now this is what the image looks like here in Photoshop. So that's how easy it is to work with the healing brush, spot healing brush tool and other tools to correct the portraits in your photograph, and now it is web ready. So we can use it as a poster, we can basically use it as a web banner, or we can use it anywhere we like. So we're going to save this, pressing Ctrl S to save it. You're going to save it in the best quality of JPEG format and click OK, and you can see our image is now edited. So here I'm going to open a web layout in Photoshop. So if I go to the open, And if you go to the home page, I have a website design here. And this website design is a little incomplete. What we need is one picture here to be added. This is the kind of a home page layout you can see. It has multiple layers in Photoshop document, and here we want to add one more image. And the image we want to add is without the background. So let's look at the image. So we go to the file, open, go to the retouch, and we are going to open this background image. And we see we have a nice picture of this person. We want to take it into the home page and utilize this picture somewhere here. For doing that, I will have to first remove its background. Now to remove the background, there are again various tools used in Photoshop. But because this is a human figure, we can use Adobe Photoshop Artificial Intelligence to automatically remove the background or to extract the background. So what we can do is we can go to the select menu here and we can go to the subject, select subject. Subject is basically an artificial intelligence machine learning tool in Photoshop building, which basically selects the subjects using the machine learning. So it is going to select the subject. Now let's go to subject and you can see it's working in the background, and it will select the subject over here. And you can see the selection of the subject is now made here. And what we can do is we can improve this further. So for that we will go to the option of select and mask, because generally when you select a picture like this, you have a lot of fringes on the edges. To improve that, we can also remove that. But before we do that, even select and subject, let's take to the home page. So what we will do is, based on the selection we have made, it will convert it to mask. And to add mask to this layer, you can simply click on this icon here in the layers panel. So we're going to the layers panel. You have the option of adding a mask and you can click on add mask, and you can see the background is now removed here. Now what I will do is I will take this picture to the home document. So for that you can select the move tool, select the picture here, click and drag and take it to the other document, click and hold on to the tab and then bring it down wherever you want to place it, and you can see the image is now showing up here. But the image is huge compared to the size. We want to use it here, so I'm going to scale this down by pressing Ctrl T to scale this down, and if we press Ctrl T, it will enter into a transfer mode. I can simply use the Alt key to scale it from the center, and I can scale this down from one corner. If you have been using Photoshop from the earlier versions, you might have to hold down the Shift key, which is not required here because Photoshop now automatically does the constraint proportion scaling without the Shift key. So we have the picture here. Let's position it a little better, and you're going to flip this also. You're going to right click and flip horizontally. Let's scale this little bit bigger, so you can press Alt, make this little bigger in size, and we can put it like that, so it is a little outside of the panel. Let's make it a little bit bigger so it aligns with the text, and you can press Enter. Now if we zoom in, it looks perfect, but if you see, there's a little bit of fringe on the edges of that white background, and we have a darker background here, and you can on this area and these parts of the image. To correct this, we can edit the layer mask of this image. For that, if you go to the layer of this image, you can see we have the layer mask, and I can double click on the layer mask to edit it. Enter the select and mask panel. If you click here, it's going to open a different panel of selecting masks. Now there are various options here we have, but the one we want to use to remove the fringe on the edges is the output settings, and we can select decontaminate colors, which basically removes the edge color overlay on the foreground here. So we can enable that, increase it to a higher number, 200%, and I will select OK. New layer with a new mask will be created for us, and if you click OK, we can see we get better picture. If you compare it, we also have the other image. You can see this is how this one looks on the edges. And if we go to the other one, this is how it looks. There's a little difference on the fringe. If I zoom in more, we are going to probably notice that more. We can see that. And if I deselect this layer and on this layer, we can see that fringe is now removed. And we have the image ready here. And there are other corrections also that you can do, like correcting face, etc. But this is a perfect picture which we needed in the scenario. And that's how you can simply remove the background of the images and use it in your web banners or on the website. And now our home page is now ready. Go to save our home page. Let's save it in PSD file because it has multiple layers to it. And we no longer need our background, so we can simply close it without saving it, because we have already used our picture here. I'm just going to align this little better. And we have the image ready and the home page ready with us. Now once you create a UI like this in Photoshop and you want to transfer the graphics to the developer. Now developers generally need this image separately. They might need this graphic separately. They might need all these images separately out of Photoshop, and probably they may not know Photoshop. Or even if you're developing the website yourself in HTML or any other technology, you will require these images separately. So let's see how can we export images out of layers in Photoshop. So it can be used in web development. What you can do in Photoshop is you can simply select a layer and right click on it, and you can export that individual layer into PNG. You can see there is an option of quick export as PNG. You can simply say quick export as PNG here, and you can define the location where you want to export it. That's why I'm creating a new folder here by the name of Final Assets. Double click here and name this image as men_pic and save it in PNG. Why we are saving in PNG? Because we need a transparent background. So when we use it in the web development process, it makes it easier to place it there without the background. So this is how I can export all the images. I can simply select them and right click and select quick export as PNG here. Go here and name it as artwork. Saying .jpg, we are going to remove that as we are going to save in PNG format again. Now you can click on save and it will be saved. Now if you look at those assets, you can see in the final assets, I have both the PNG images exported, which are well optimized in the file size and is in the PNG format. So the web developer can use these images whenever needed. That's how simple it is to export the elements out of Photoshop Web UI.
We help fashion models build their portfolios or websites. These models need to look their best. Sometimes there are blemishes or spots on their faces. What would you do to tackle this? How would you make them look all good?
In Adobe Photoshop, we have a tool called Spot Healing, a healing brush tool, clone stamp tool, and patch tool. Using these tools, we can remove the blemishes and spots with patches or nearby objects. we can make these models look as fresh and flawless as needed. It's that easy.
We hope that these skills add experiences to your learning journey. Now, let's start a new session. Adobe Photoshop is one of the most commonly used image editing tools that web designers use to create logos, retouch images, add effects, etc. This tool helps in creating UI elements like graphics, icons, etc. and is one of the major tools to create or edit images for your web pages or websites. This session starts with explaining the steps for image automation in Photoshop. Next, it explains the process of cropping images using Photoshop. Then, this session explains the detailed steps of improving your homepage when editing a web page of your website using Photoshop. Finally, the session sums up with steps to export the images edited in Photoshop. The image exports are usually done in PNG formats. Thus, a lot can be done when editing or creating images with Photoshop. So wait no more and create a beautiful web page with attractive images or logos as per your preferences.
Now the next thing we are going to look at is the automation in Photoshop. How can you automate images in Photoshop? So if you look at one of the scenarios here and the images I have, for example, you want to get a web gallery, and for that you can see I have multiple pictures here. Now these pictures are larger in the file size and even in the resolution. So you can see each image is approximately 3 MB or up to 5 MB or even more than that. Like for example, this image is of 6 MB, which is huge for the web and it takes a lot bandwidth to download such images. So we are going to optimize these images for the web, not one by one, but by running the automation in Photoshop. For that, we need to open one of these images in Photoshop. So we go to the Photoshop, back, and go to the File, Open, and I want to just open any one of these images here. So let's take this one. So we are going to open it up, and I'm not closing the other document because I will be keeping this open so that we don't lose this interface when we close this picture over here. So you can see the image is now open over here. It's a very big image. It has a resolution of around 6 to 7K. We don't need such a resolution. So if you zoom in, if you go to the 100% of it, we can see we can zoom to that level, right? Which is not required for web, here which simply increases its file size and even just not to decrease the files. We are just going to make this better. So what we are going to do is we are going to record the action. Whatever steps now we do in Photoshop, we are going to record it. So the same steps can be replicated with the other images as well. So what we will do is we will go to the window and we go to the actions option here. In the actions, we will get a new action. You can see the action window is now open and we create a new action. We are going to name this action as for the web images. Just name it anything you like. Simply say record. Now going to record whatever you're going to do in Photoshop. The first thing we are going to do is reduce the file size of it. So go to the image, file size, and we can reduce the file size in pixels. So I will change from inches to pixels, and you can see it has a large file size to it and also a very high resolution, which is 300, not required for this image. So what we will do is we will change this resolution to 72, and we are going to also reduce the number of pixels in the width to approximately 1200. So we are going to make it 1200. It will automatically take the height of the image. Now we are taking the width as 1200 pixels and changing the resolution to 72 and click OK. So soon as I click OK, you can see the image is getting smaller. I'm pressing Ctrl 0 to fit it here, and if you go to the Actions panel, you can see it recorded that action here. Besides this, I want to make sure that it's always auto color correct. So I go to the image and say auto color the image. You can see it's going to auto color the image with the levels. The next thing I'm going to do is we want to make sure the image is sharp enough. So you go to the filter and we will say sharpen and apply the smart sharpened filter to this picture. So that it gets sharpened here, applying already 200% sharpness to it. You can see which is getting much sharper here, so I'm going to reduce that to approximately about 100% here, because otherwise it will be too much of sharpening of the image. So we can simply click on OK to sharpen the image over here, and you can see the smart sharpen is now applied to the picture. And so on, you can keep recording the multiple steps you know what you want to perform on all the other pictures. So these are the steps which I want to perform by this automation here. Now what I can do is I can simply save this file in the format I want to. So I can simply close this. And I say it asked me to save it. I say yes, I want to save this file. And you can see it saves and closes the file here. Now our action is now complete. You can go to stop and we can stop the action here. So let's look at the size of that picture. Remember it was 6 MB previously. Now this image is only 375 KB, only in the KB and not even in MBs, and still has a decent resolution to it. Now we want to apply the same settings to all the other images. How can we do that? Let's look into it. So we go back to Photoshop. Now you can go, because you have the action recorded with you. You can go to the file option and you can go to the automate. In the automate, you have the option to run batch. So you go to the batch option, and in the web, in the batch, you can see it picks the recent action automatically. If it does not choose your recent actions, it simply goes to drop down and choose the action which you just named it. Now it asks you to select the folder where you have all the images. So say choose, and I go to my desktop, Photoshop, select this automation folder which have all the pictures including the one we just corrected. So that's fine. It's going to just reprocess that picture or going to make changes in that. Such change all the other pictures. So if you look at the automation folder file size before we run that batch action, if you right click and if you go to the properties, you can see it's 41 MB size. Now I'm going to run the batch action, reduce the file size of all these photographs and then see what happens. So you can simply say OK, and you can see Photoshop is automatically opening each image one by one and processing it over here. It's going to take some time, but there's no manual intervention needed here. It's going to automatically open each picture, apply those settings which you have chosen for it, and simply open it, close it, open it, close it by applying those settings one by one, and you can see it's processing those images. Now how fast it does totally depends on your system configuration and kind of images and the resolution of the images you have in Photoshop opening here. So you can see the Photoshop is now processing each picture one by one, as almost going to be finishing up over here, and you can see we have total of approximately 12 pictures here, and Photoshop has almost finished processing those pictures here. Now done. So if you go back, you can see all the file sizes are now reduced to KBs. Not only this, if you go to the folder size of it, remember it was of 41 MB. Now if you right click and if you go to the properties, you can see this only of 3 MB approximately 2.5 MB to 3 MB. So you can see there's a huge file size change here, and we can easily upload these pictures on our website. So they are fully optimized. So the Photoshop optimization tools and the actions are very powerful to run repeated actions or repeated commands to multiple pictures using Photoshop. The other thing I'm going to talk about is cropping in Photoshop. So I'll go to the file here and open it up. Let's see how we can crop some images. For example, if you look at this image here. Now this image is well optimized in the file size, but it has lot of white areas next to it. And we want to crop this better. So what we can do is we can simply select the picture and open it in Photoshop. Now you can simply go to the crop tool to crop the pictures. If you go to the crop tool and select it, you can see the 4 corners will get activated from where you can crop the picture. You can simply click and drag to crop the picture here and give you these guides, basically known as rule of thirds or the golden ratio. You can change this grid by simply going to this icon, and you can see it currently displaying you the rule of thirds, which generally says the object should not be in the center of the image. But we are not really worried about the rule of thirds here. We just want to crop the image for the web, and we are going to crop it from here as well to make it almost centered on both the sides. We can reduce its length more, so we just want to focus on the product majorly here. Let's crop it little bit from here as well, and you can see we are going to crop. We are going to delete all this area which is outside of it. And to do that, you can simply press enter. So if we just press enter, the image will be cropped in Photoshop, and you can now save the image. So press Ctrl S to save the image, and the image is now saved in Photoshop over here. Now let's look at the last part in Photoshop is to improve the home page here. So we go to the home page here, and you can see that we have this picture assigned here. What I want to do is I want to give it a little rounded look from the bottom, and we can do that by using the Photoshop capabilities of clip masking here. So for doing that, what you can do is you can go to the draw a shape in a rounded circle here, and in Photoshop you also have the vector tools. So I'm going to the ellipse tool here, and I can click and drag to create a shape here onto this layer. But before we do that, I'm going to select this layer here by the selection tool. So the order of that layer gets selected in my layers panel. So I'm going to the ellipse tool here. I'm going to draw a shape, and you can just choose any fill color, doesn't really matter, but the fill color should be visible to us. So I'm just going to simply change the fill color of it to a bright red, for example, and then I will click and drag to create a circle. We are going to get a perfect circle. You can press the shift key to take a proportionate circle here. So just draw it. You can see now it's drawing a perfect circle. I want to draw it like that. Like this over here. So I want to get that rounded edge around it. You can see this is what it will do to it. And now our shape is ready. What we just need to do is we need to move this image above the elliptical. So we can simply click and drag the layer of the image on top of that circle here. You can see that looks nice there. But what I want to do is I want to use the circle for cropping the image. And for that, what you can do is you can simply right click on this image now and say create clip mask, which will automatically clip the image into that circle. You can see, and we can go to the circle here. We can just choose any color we like. You can modify that. You can simply select the ellipse tool here, and we can go to the part selection tool. Now if you go to the part selection tool and if you select this ellipse tool, you can see you can change the fill and the stroke. We don't want any stroke to it. We are going to make it 0. And for this stroke, for the fill of it, let's change its fill to something else. Maybe I want to pick up this orange here. This orange, same color here. So for that, what you can also do is you can pick up the fill color by going to this box here, color picker, and you can pick up the color you need to. So you can simply click here to pick the color, click OK. And you can see that color is now getting picked here. You can also adjust this circle to move it further. You can also make it smaller if needed at any point of time. But the image will automatically get clipped over here. So I'm going to keep it like that. You can also move the image, by the way. So we can go to the image, go to the move tool, and you can also move the image to readjust that within the circle. So I'm going to select both of them now and move them down like that. So you can see now we have the image in the circle for the web layout. And if you want to again export it as one picture, as a single combined picture, what we can do is we can select both the layers here. You can right click and you can say export as PNG. So remember, I'm selecting both the layers here. Go to the export, just select the folder to export it. So it has done a quick export of it, but let's see how the export looks. So go to the export folder and you can see we have both the ellipticals over here has been exported as combined. Is going to export two images. The reason is because the two layers are selected here and simply export it 2 times here. If you just want to export at one time without taking 2 copies of it, you can simply right click here in Photoshop and you can first create a group from layers. You can group these layers into a group, this group. Then you can right click on the group, say export as PNG. So you can just export the group one time. So if I go and look at it now, we can see it just exports group 1 PNG here. So that's how you can even export it, the images out of Photoshop. So that's it in this Photoshop demo. Of course, there's a lot more you can do depending on your creativity level, but that's how you can use Photoshop for the web. Thank you.
Now, having images web ready, creating typography, and more are all important. No doubt about it. However, we have something called white space on a website. Do you have an idea about it?
Yes, keeping white space on a website is as important as having content on it. This is because the white space gives the content on the website a breathing space. Then they are easy to read, easy to notice, and convey the right message. And it is also vital for keeping the website design minimal and crisp.